Unit 3, Lesson 4, Mr. Bowley's 5th grade English class. We're going to continue in our poetry journals today, as we are going to be in Lesson 4, which begins on page 37. But first, we're going to talk about two poems today. They are the Copper Beech, that's B-E-E-C-H. It's a type of tree, not the beach like the ocean, but it's Mary Howe's The Copper Beech. And then Naomi, Shihab, the Father, and the Fig Tree. We're also going to talk about comparing and contrasting, similes and metaphors, all that good stuff. The poems today talk about nature, just like, Walt Whitman's talked a little bit about the stars and everything. Where I talk about how people experience some, nature differently than each other. They both connect to a tree, but they connect to it in a different way. So in the two poems, we're going to compare and contrast the poems. So you will compose a list of things found in the natural world. Select the items from the world and they remind you of personal experience and learn lessons and gain new perspectives. Compare and contrast characters' point of views and illustrate those points using a graphic organizer. And then use details from the text to infer the figurative meaning of similes and metaphors. So, let's get started with a couple words in the glossary. Remember, you have a glossary in the back along with the creative space. You have all the glossary back here for the different words that you will find in the text. We're reading a Palestinian folklore, so you will see the name of the Muslim Arab god Allah. Not the same God as the Jews and Christians or Hindus or Baptists God. It's a different God. It's the God specifically of that people, that culture, not culture, but that religion. So, also the word assurance, which means promise. You have assurance of something. Copper Beech, again, B-E-E-C-H, is a type of tree, a very large tree that can grow several hundred years to about 150 feet. So pretty big. Emblem, which is a symbol. Immense, which is extremely large, which is an immense beech tree, right? Indifferent, which means uncaring. Shihab, character of the Palestinian folklore who's known for playing tricks on people. Interesting enough. So keep track of your definitions of things at the back that you can get. There is also figurative language. Words or phrases that mean more than their dictionary definition are things of figurative language. Metaphor and simile. So if I say that I have the speed of a cheetah, I'm using a metaphor. When you use like or as, like if I say I have speed like a cheetah, or if I have speed as a cheetah. Anyway, like or as, similes, otherwise it's metaphor. Keep that in mind. So we're going to begin reading. Now, think about, first of all, some natural items. We could write down some. I want you to think about things that you see in the natural world. It can be as large as the Grand Canyon, that immense canyon, or a beach, an ocean, the Verdigris River, what have you, that you find in nature, not man-made, natural things that you will use in this. So you'll have, 4.1. Remember, each lesson we do in class every day, you're supposed to get through the whole thing to get credit on it. You have to work on it. Look over the list of natural items your teacher wrote down using the list of your own memory. Think about a time when you saw, visited, or otherwise experienced something in nature that made a big impression on you. Recall the memory of that experience and use it to answer part 1. So number 1 is, where are you? Okay. That, literally, where are you in that memory? What part of nature did you experience? Was it a river? Was it trees? I saw some really amazing mountains when I was in Oregon this summer, in Washington, now St. Helens. I saw some pretty neat desert lands out in Israel. I've seen the Grand Canyon. Now, that's actually the one that comes to my mind the most. When it comes to number 3, did you experience it by smelling, tasting, touching, seeing, or hearing? Write a couple sentences to to describe how you experienced that nature. When I was at the Grand Canyon a number of years ago, before me and my wife got married, we hadn't gotten engaged yet. It was actually 6 months before our engagement. We were sitting there. We finally got to the Grand Canyon. My best friend John was there, and my wife, and we just stood there and we stared out at this glorious view of the sun setting of the Grand Canyon. It was amazing. And I'm like sitting there thinking, okay, this would have been a good moment to propose if I had just bought the ring yet. I didn't have it yet. Just, I should have. Should just right there. That would have been perfect. But no. So anyway, I experienced that. And those are the memories that start flowing. So, obviously, none of you are getting married just yet. So you're going to have a different experience, a different kind of memory you could have experienced anywhere in the way of going to a beach, going to a river, anything involving nature. That's why you're going to work on that there. How you experience it. Evaluate your experience. The next questions here on page 38. How did this experience change your thoughts, feelings, or actions? So you're evaluating it. Okay. Then, literally, use your answers in the first 4 questions to condense the information in 2 or 3 sentences to tell a brief story. Part 2, you're going to get together with a partner and discuss your story and theirs. Then you're going to see how your list of experiences differ from your partner's. List as many ways as you can that your experience in nature was different. And then number 7 is how many ways they were common. There's another 2 words that we are learning. Compare. Compare how they are alike, and contrast how are they different. And that's what you'll do. You'll compare and contrast your list with your partner's. After you're done with that, you can begin reading The Copper Beech by Mary Howe. Remember, at the end of each lesson is a a biography of that author. Okay. Want you to read the poem. I'm going to read the poem to you, actually. But go ahead and look at this tree. This is the tree, okay, that we're talking about. It's a big tree. It's a large tree. Immense, entirely itself, it wore that yard like a dress, with limbs low enough for me to enter it and climb the crooked ladder to where I could lean against the trunk and practice being alone. One day I heard the sound before I saw it. Rain fell, darkening the sidewalk. Sitting close to the center, not very high in the branches, I heard it hitting the high leaves, and I was happy. Watching it happen without it happening to me. Watching it happen without it happening to me. So read that again slowly to yourself. You can highlight wherever it seems to be defining in that particular poem. And you'll start answering the questions on 42 and 43 about it. Looking at the image above, the tree right there, using clues from the words of the poem, you draw a circle to show where the speaker would be located. Write a sentence below to explain with details of the poem to help you know where the speaker will be located. So look at the poem and see where the speaker should be sitting based on what the poem says. Look for clues, like near the trunk, close to the center, not very high up in the branches, sort of in the middle. When you're in a tree, like a really large tree, an immense tree, there is a point where if you're close enough to the trunk and it's raining, you don't necessarily get wet because the rain is, kind of funneling down over the leaves and it's not always going to hit you. Just depends. If there's a lot of wind and stuff, that may not necessarily be true. But you get the idea. So again, figurative language consists of words or phrases that mean more than a dictionary definition. There's a nice reminder of that on the bottom. Okay, page 43. In line 5, the speaker mentions what she did in the tree. What words does she use to describe what she did in the tree? Sometimes it helps if you go ahead and just write in the lines. Some poems will have lines. I could lean against the trunk and practice being alone. That's line 5. So you would put on there what she was doing in the tree. Okay. Number 3, later in the poem, the speaker says she was happy. Look back at the poem and find words to suggest why the speaker felt happy. Underline the word or words. Then using your own words, write a sentence explaining what made the speaker happy. Paraphrasing, again, we talked about paraphrasing, is when you take words and you rewrite them, the important things about that, in your own words. Explain why the speaker was happy. Why was the person happy in the tree? Number 4, each phrase below suggests a possible meaning the tree has for the speaker. For each phrase, write a reason from the poem that shows why the tree has this meaning. Write 2 more words or phrases on the 2 remaining lines to show other things the tree means to Hal, the author. Make sure to give a reason for each. So it has the meaning of as an observation post, and she can sit there and watch as the sidewalk get darkened. She can hear the rain before it even starts falling because it's hitting the tree. Secret lair, a place to hide. Sometimes we all need a place to hide. Number 5, this poem's title, The Copper Beech, describes the name of the tree, indicates the tree is somehow important to the speaker. Using your own words, but basing them on the way the speaker feels about the tree, write a sentence that describes how the speaker in this poem might feel about nature in general. Make sure you use evidence from the poem to explain your choice. Always use evidence from the poem to explain your choice when you're going to go over something, because quite frankly, that's part of what we're trying to teach you, is how to do research and figure out how this is saying this and how to prove it. Because when you start writing papers in high school or in middle school even, they're going to expect you to cite your resources. Cite your sources. And quite frankly, we're spoiled these days with the internet and Google. I had to go down to the library and pull out this huge file drawer, thumb through all these information cards, get them out, and then go look up the books that those were based on. It's so much easier now. But, hey, it's always still good to go to the library and look things up too. All right. The second poem that we're going to read today, My Father and the Fig Tree, by Naomi Shihab 9. I probably butchered her name. But it's about a woman. She's writing about an encounter with nature, although there are some differences between Nye's poem and Hal's poem. After thinking about Nye's poem on its own, you're going to compare it to Hal's poem. So, you'll hear about a character named Shihab. Remember, he's the Palestinian folklore guy that likes to play tricks. Nye's father is Palestinian. It's also told, it's likely he told her stories from his culture. As a poem, the poem notes there are several different stories about Shihab, and Nye's father changes some of the details each time he tells the story. So he's changing details. This happens often with folk stories in various countries because they're passed down orally. So listen, pay attention to hear not only about Shihab but Nye's father and his experience with nature, okay, as we read it. Which, of course, you can also read silently. And once we get finished reading it, we will answer 6 questions that are on pages 48 and 49. And then there's a comparison and contrasting, so we'll get there. All right. For other fruits, my father was indifferent. He'd point at cherry trees and say, "See those? I wish they were figs." In the evening, he sat by our beds, weaving folk tales like vivid little scarves. They always involved a fig tree. Even when it didn't fit, he'd stick it in. Once Jaha was walking down the road and he saw a fig tree. Or he tied his camel to a fig tree and went to sleep. Or later, when they caught and arrested him, his pockets were full of figs. At age 6, I ate a dried fig and shrugged. "That's not what I'm talking about," he said. "I'm talking about a fig straight from the earth, gift from Allah, on a branch so heavy it touches the ground. I'm talking about picking the largest, fattest, sweetest fig in the world and putting it in my mouth." Here he'd stop and close his eyes. I want to read that last part again. I'm talking about picking the largest, fattest, sweetest fig in the world and putting it in my mouth. Okay. So, turn it on the back. Years passed. We lived in many houses. None had fig trees. We had lima beans, zucchini, parsley, beets. Plant one, my mother said, but my father never did. He tended garden half-heartedly, forgot to water, let the okra get too big. He tended garden half-heartedly, forgot to water, let the okra get too big. Just totally repeated that, sorry. What a dreamer he is. Look how many things he starts and doesn't finish. The last time he moved, I had a phone call. My father in Arabic chanting a song I'd never heard. What's that? He took me out to the new yard. There in the middle of Dallas, Texas, a tree with the largest, fattest, sweetest fig in the world. It's a fig tree song, he said, plucking his fruit like ripe tokens, emblems, assurance of a world that was always his own. So you see how much he really liked that fig tree. And then the next 6 questions in the back are going to be discussing that poem. Underline similes in the first and last stanza of this poem. Then list them below and explain what the figurative meaning of each simile might be. So you have the simile from the first stanza. Okay? Weaving folk tales like vivid little scarves. So, what is the meaning behind that? I mean, you're weaving folk tales like vivid little scarves. Think of the reason for scarves or for folk tales. You know, stories. How are they like scarves? How they weave together. How stories themselves weave together information. Imagine how that works. The simile from the last stanza is plucking his fruits like ripe tokens. So think about what that means as well, you know. Is obviously something prized to the father. He loves them. He loves the fig trees so much. And that's, you know, what he means by that. Then, of course, the simile from the last stanza and the figurative. Okay, we got that. Number 2, in stanza 1, the father tells 3 different tales about Jaha. What happens in each one? In the first tale, he's walking down the road, and he saw a fig tree. Just saw it. In the second tale, what happens? He tied his camel to the fig tree and went to sleep. So, you know, he's enjoying the fig tree. He's sleeping next to the fig tree. And by the third tale, he's caught and arrested with his pocket full of figs. So he was stealing figs from the tree. What is Nai's reaction to the fig she eats at 6? Use words from the poem to help you with your answer. Look at stanza 2 for a starting point. So read and see what she said. You know, how did she react when she ate the fig tree? When she ate the fig. And we read that back there in stanza 2. The beginning of stanza 2. Remember, stanzas, not paragraph, we would put it in a paragraph statement if this were regular writing, but in poetry, it's stanzas. So it's the second stanza. And you see in that first line what she does when she ate it. Okay. Question 4. Based on this reaction, how much do you think she liked the fig? Circle the best answer below. She loved it. She thought it was okay. She hated it. So infer for me what you think that was, what she thought. Number 5. Later in stanza 2, Nai's father describes a different kind of fig than the one she's eaten. What words does her father use to describe the fig? So in the end, later in stanza 2, you write down how he described it, how he described that. The gift of Allah, largest, fattest, sweet thing in the world, right? Based on the way Nai's father describes the figs in stanza 2, how does he seem to feel about figs? So think about that. Okay. We will look over those questions. So, in the last stanza, Nai is singing the fig tree song. I just love that. It's like, when you finally get something you've longed for forever, like, peaches or apricots or bananas. If you haven't had something that you love for a long, long time, you finally get it. Oh, it's a sweet gift. It's a sweet treasure. It's a sweet blessing. Definitely. Okay. So, comparing and contrasting. Making little charts or graphs. Basically, this is what the graphic organizer is. Complete the following chart, then use information and other information from the poem to answer the following questions. You may consult the poem in filling out the chart and answering the questions. So, you have question, your character, first the Hal poem, and then Nye's father. So you're going to just say Hal, that's the character. Number 1, what kind of tree does the character like? And you'll fill that in. I'll help you out there, okay? The poem is about the Copper Beech tree. So, Copper Beech. And then Nye's father likes the fig tree. And then Hal, what kind of story? Whose story is the character telling? Hal is telling a story. Whose is she telling about? Is she telling about her own or someone else's? And the same thing with Nye. Is Nye telling the story of herself or of her father? And literal. And number 3, how does the character show his or her own feelings for the tree? So how do we see the character respond to their tree? And then number 4, what does the tree represent to the character? I mean, what does the character feel about that tree? Okay, think about that. Okay. Now, going on to the next page. What differences exist? Here, number 1, at the bottom. Forget that. What do these characters have in common? Remember, comparing how they are alike. What do they have in common? I'll help you out a little bit. They both like trees. Go from there. And then what differences? Number 2 on the next page. What differences are there between Nye's father feeling about nature and the way how Hal feels about it? Now, Nye expected the trees to be gifts from his God. And he didn't want to plant his own. I can see Hal going out there and planting whatever tree she wants to, is the way she felt about trees. So you kind of get an idea of what differences there are existing between those. Number 3, based on what you know about each character, make an inference about which of the following he or she would most likely do from the list below. Fill the item in the appropriate blank and provide a reason to explain your choice. Visiting a library, planting a tree, telling stories to neighbors, speaking to a group of people, and why they should protect the forest, visit another country. So, what would Hal most likely do on this list? Okay? And why? You write because, okay? Hal would most likely do one of these things, and then because. Give me a reason. The Nye would most likely do one of these things. Tell stories, plant a tree, speak to a group of people. Planting a tree, probably not. You didn't want to plant a fig tree, so probably not. And then because. That is the end of that lesson. So you can read the biography about Mary Howe and about Miss Nye at the end. So what we did today is we talked about comparing and contrasting things found in the natural world. Talked again about similes and metaphors and figurative language, and we went over a graphic organizer to help us with the contrasting and comparison. As the end of lesson 4. Thank you.